so glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you this Monday. The tariff factor as Algoma Steel lays off more than a third of its workers.
It was a bait and switch.
We will make sure that we support them.
Why multi-million-dollar lifelines weren't enough to save jobs.
As Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture.
Inside today's cabinet shuffle, who's who on the front bench?
Top of the list is to save money.
Plus, what Cyber Monday means for spending and buying Canadian.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
A difficult day for some 1,000 employees with Algoma Steel. They have been laid off as the company, reeling from Donald Trump's 50% tariffs, passed out pink slips. The company is a huge exporter of steel to the Americans and has been feeling the pain. CTV's Abigail Beeman now on the Sault Ste. Marie company and how it was forced to go down this road. Abigail.
Sandy, this is a massive blow to the steel industry and specifically to the 1,000 Algoma workers and their families. 1,000 layoff notices to a company that employs about 2,700 people in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. The company blamed U.S. tariffs for the layoffs, saying in a statement, "These tariffs have fundamentally altered the competitive landscape and sharply limited our ability to access the U.S. market." As a result of these pressures, Algoma has been forced to conclude its long history as an integrated steel manufacturer and close its blast furnace and coke-making operations in early 2026. Algoma will transition to electric arc furnace steelmaking at that time, a year earlier than previously anticipated or planned. Both the federal and provincial government took steps to try and reinforce the company. In September, Ottawa announced a $400 million loan, Ontario $100 million.
Our thoughts are with them. The Prime Minister looked them in the eye and promised he would protect their jobs, that he would negotiate a win, and I quote, have a deal by July 21st, but it was a bait and switch that is costing people their livelihoods.
My team and I have been in contact with Algoma's leadership team. We absolutely have every confidence in the Algoma workers as they're going through this hardship, and we will make sure that we support them as they're developing new products and also accessing new markets.
No specifics from the feds about how they will support them, while Ontario says it's launched a local centre to support workers, including retraining. The layoffs take effect in March of next year. Sandy?
Okay, Abigail, thank you. Now, as part of that trade dispute, U.S. liquor was pulled from shelves in most provinces. Today, some $14 million worth went on sale in Nova Scotia. At least $4 million from the sale will go to Feed Nova Scotia and other food organizations. After the U.S. inventory is gone, there are no plans to buy American. All right, Prime Minister Mark Carney was forced to rearrange the deck today with a small cabinet shuffle after last week's high-profile resignation of Quebec MP Stephen Guilbeault. With his multiple portfolios, he had issues with Ottawa's energy deal with Alberta. CTV's Judy Trin is outside Rideau Hall, where the swearing-in ceremony took place this afternoon. Okay, Judy, take us through the faces changing roles.
Sandy, the Prime Minister has decided to take Stephen Guilbeault's responsibilities and divide them among 3 ministers. The biggest surprise might be the return of a new old face. Mark Miller, a close friend and big supporter of Justin Trudeau, returns to the inner circle. He previously served as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations as well as Immigration Minister, but now he returns as the minister responsible for Canadian culture and identity, as well as official languages. Now, the other changes involve Joël Lightbound, who takes on the additional role of Quebec Lieutenant, in addition to his role as Minister of Transformation for Public Service and Procurement. And Julie DeBrussen, the current Minister of Environment and Climate Change, will take on the portfolio of nature and be responsible for national parks. Sandy.
Okay, so Judy, I guess we could say it took 3 people to replace 1 person.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But, you know, we spoke to Mark Miller because we were interested in how he was feeling about returning to cabinet. Take a listen to what he said.
I got into politics because I love my country and want to contribute to it. You can't imagine the work that just regular MPs are able to do. I was able to do that in the first 4 years of being elected and had the opportunity to be a minister for about 6 years, and now another opportunity. So it feels great. I am a guy that likes to be busy, and so I was a little restless, but it's nice to get the opportunity to keep on doing some amazing work and contributing to Canada.
A bit of trivia for you, Sandy. All three ministers involved in today's shuffle were first elected in 2015, the year Justin Trudeau formed the government. Also, cabinet now stands at 38 members. Sandy.
All right, CTV's Judy Trun. Judy, thank you. CTV's chief political correspondent Vashi Kapelis is standing by. Okay, Vashi, give us the big picture, the strategy behind today's appointments. What is the real political story here?
Well, I think one of the big political stories that comes to mind right away is the idea that the Prime Minister and the people around him needed to stem the bleeding a little bit. The exit of Steven Guilbeault was an impactful one from a political perspective, both outside, particularly in Quebec, the cabinet table, but also within the Liberal caucus. I heard from a lot of people over the last week or so since that MOU was signed who were upset. We're actually like emotional in some instances about Steven Guilbeault leaving and what it signified for the government's priority or lack thereof being placed on the issue of climate change and mitigating the impacts of climate change. So I think a little bit of this, because Mark Miller is closely associated with people in the last government, is about addressing those feelings and perhaps attempting to make people in caucus and the staffers around them feel a little bit better about the direction the government is going in. I don't know necessarily if it works, but I think that's part of the political story here,
Okay,
Sandy.
so Vashi, I know you were at the press gallery dinner this weekend in Ottawa, and at the time the Prime Minister, when he spoke, suggested that a bigger shuffle will happen. This was the small one today. So do you know anything about what's coming down the road?
I think we can definitely expect a much more substantive cabinet shuffle early in the new year. This one was minor. It was essentially forced on the Prime Minister with the resignation of Steven Guilbeault, and you can see those three individuals just took a different part of the portfolio, right? There was no big changes to cabinet this time around, and my understanding is that plans are underway for something more substantive. I think there are certain files which certainly have been more problematic, and other ministers which maybe aren't serving to their full capacity that I think my understanding is that there is a desire to see moved around. I think events could always get in the way of it, particularly around the renegotiation of USMCA and what's going on with Donald Trump. But right now, all I keep hearing is the plan is tracking for a more substantive cabinet shuffle early in the new year.
Okay, Vashi, thank you. Now, as we heard from the Minister of the Environment today, after BC's Premier had a change of heart over his objection to an Alberta pipeline going through his province, we want to tap into CTV's senior political correspondent Mike Lecouture on next steps to make that project a reality. Mike.
Sandy, despite last week's signing of a memorandum of understanding, there are still a number of steps before there are shovels in the ground.
Do you support a pipeline?
Opposition MPs grilled the Environment Minister about a possible new pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast. But Julie DeBruzen says it's not only up to the federal government.
If the provinces and the Indigenous peoples are in agreement, that then there is a pathway to actually make that happen. But I am not
what happen?
For a pipeline. But
Thank you.
While the federal government does have the jurisdiction over interprovincial pipelines, the minister says any project will have to involve all stakeholders.
There needs to be agreement from the province of British Columbia and of Indigenous peoples, and we're not going to override the jurisdiction of our provinces, and we're not going to override the rights of Indigenous rights holders.
The coastal First Nations are opposed to a pipeline going through their land in northwestern BC, but the route still isn't decided. The former head of Kinder Morgan Canada points out there is another path.
And the market should decide where that pipeline ends up. Like, is it Kitimat? Is it Prince Rupert? Is it Vancouver? Do we go back to Vancouver and build another pipe, along the existing Trans Mountain route, which is always an alternative?
On CTV's question period, BC Premier David Eby said he'd be willing to talk about a pipeline through his province if the tanker ban remains in place. In a statement, Premier Daniel Smith said, "I will also continue to engage with the Premier on the larger bitumen pipeline project to see what ideas he has on how we can ensure this project can proceed in a manner that benefits both Albertans and British Columbians."
And there is some time for that. Alberta has until July 1st to submit its pipeline application to the Federal Major Projects Office. Sandy?
All right, CTV's Mike Tour. Well, the folks in New Brunswick were hoping to fill up on cheaper gas today. They were sadly disappointed. Premier Holt had promised to eliminate adjusted carbon costs. That didn't happen. Now, those costs, by the way, are what refineries pass on to consumers because of environmental regulations. CTV's Sarah Plowman on reaction to the pumps and response from the government. Hi, Sarah.
Sandy, a lot of people wish they were paying less for gas, but also say there's nothing they can do about it. Prices at the pumps didn't drop today, despite a promise by the Premier.
It's easy to promise, it's harder to deliver. I don't know what choice we have, really, right?
Premier Susan Holt promised to lower gas prices by scrapping what's called the carbon cost adjuster, an extra 8 cents a litre, and allows the industry to pass on the cost of federal environmental regulations. But 3 days before gas was to go down, the province's Energy and Utilities Review Board sided with retailers and wholesalers and brought in a temporary charge equal to what Holt cancelled. The results? Prices stay the same for now.
Yes, I'm quite frustrated by it because it's clear that New Brunswickers have been overcharged. We wanted to take that pressure off of them.
The provincial opposition argues the carbon cost adjuster is necessary to help keep gas stations afloat and claim the Premier misled the public.
If the Premier was really serious about, saving 8 cents a litre on the price of gas, she could do it tomorrow in the legislature by removing, the tax, 8 cents worth of tax on gas.
The manager of this gas station says businesses like this one could not have absorbed the cost.
That's just too much to bear for the retailers these days. The big companies might be able to handle it, but the smaller ones, no way.
Premier Holt says she's looking at other options to find savings for New Brunswickers. A final decision by the review board is expected to take several months. Sandy.
All right, CTV's Sarah Plowman. Toronto fire officials briefed reporters today about why a condo fire is still smoldering after 5 days, comparing the flames to a slow-burning cigar they can't reach.
This is the material, which is combustible particle board that was placed between an expansion joint. That is causing us the problem.
With fires still burning behind the walls, there is no update on when people living in the 400 units can return home. And a search is underway at a local landfill in Winnipeg for the remains of Ashley Shingoose, an Indigenous woman killed in 2022 by convicted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. Premier Wab Kinew met with the victim's parents this morning.
To just see the effort and structure and resources that are being brought to bear here, I just told her parents, I hope you feel that this is the value and the respect and the dignity that we hold for your daughter, and I hope we're able to bring her home.
City workers, including family members, will search the Brady Road landfill in the city's East End. The 30-year-old was the first of 4 women killed by Skibitsky. He is currently serving 4 concurrent life sentences for the murders. Coming up after the break, wounded in the West Bank.
I myself was kicked repeatedly in the head.
What a Canadian activist says happened after her group was attacked. Plus, how the White House is defending a deadly second boat strike. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with French President Emmanuel Macron today to discuss the potential peace plan with Russia. Both leaders insist no decisions can be made without Ukraine and Europe at the table. Zelensky adding that Russia should not be rewarded for starting the war. The U.S. has sent an envoy to Moscow for a meeting with Vladimir Putin tomorrow. A Canadian was among several activists wounded in the West Bank after an alleged attack by Israeli settlers. Ottawa issued a statement today condemning growing settler violence in the region. CTV's Colton Prale has more now on the incident and what Ottawa is saying about it. Colton.
Sandy, a Canadian woman and 3 Italians were attacked in the early morning hours Sunday in the village of In Al Duke near Jericho in the West Bank. The woman from British Columbia, who asked not to be identified, says masked settlers armed with rifles and clubs beat her and her companions in an attempt to intimidate them.
They proceeded for at least 15 minutes to attack and beat us brutally. I myself was kicked repeatedly in the head, in the ribs, in the hip, and in the thigh. They poured gasoline on us and threatened to burn the house down.
In the past month,
The woman is part of a Palestinian group which places international activists in the West Bank to try to deter settler violence. She says attacks in the Duke region have become a daily occurrence over the past 2 months. In a statement, Global Affairs Canada says it's aware of a Canadian citizen injured in the West Bank, but can't provide further information. Canada condemned violence committed by what it calls extremist settlers and opposes any actions or talk about the annexation of the Palestinian territories, calling the settlements illegal. Meanwhile, the United Nations says there were over 260 settler attacks across the West Bank in October, the most in any month since 2006. Meanwhile, the Canadian woman says she and her colleagues will return to the community of Duke, where they were attacked, once they recover from their injuries.
What happened to us is terrible, but it's nothing in comparison to the Palestinian experience.
Last week, Germany, France, the UK, and Italy said the increased attacks risk undermining the success of a Gaza peace plan. They're urging the Israeli government to reverse its settlement policy. Sandy.
CTV's Colton Prale. More than 390 people are reported dead in Sri Lanka, and even more are still missing after a cyclone brought devastating floods to the country. Aerial footage shows the scope of the flooding, with more than 200,000 people affected. The extreme weather destroyed bridges, triggered landslides, and covered roads. More than 300 people are still missing. And the White House says the admiral who ordered a second strike on an alleged drug trafficking boat from Venezuela, killing all on board, was within his authority to do so.
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave the authorization to conduct multiple strikes. Some U.S. lawmakers suggest the attacks could amount to a war crime. Still ahead, stuck in legal gridlock, why hundreds of court cases in Newfoundland are at a standstill. Hundreds of court cases in Newfoundland and Labrador are being put on pause because the province's court system is experiencing major staffing issues. The situation affects nearly every traffic and small claims case due to be heard in that province. CTV's Garrett Barry has more on the implications of this major legal limbo. Garrett.
Sandy, we haven't gotten a formal explanation about what exactly is happening in the background, but it does appear that a shortage of sheriff's officers in this province is at least part of the reason why so many cases have been brought to a sudden halt.
Notice was sent Friday advising lawyers of changes in 5 courthouses across the province, and 3 of them, including St. John's, all traffic and small claims cases have been put on an indefinite pause. And 2 traveling rural court schedules are being scrapped completely, forcing lawyers and criminal defendants to bigger centres further away. There's been little communication from the province's provincial court about when these cases may come back to life. The changes even caught the union representing sheriff's officers in the province off guard.
Not to be given a heads up, that's number one, unacceptable. Extremely concerning because, again, frontline sheriffs and other staff may have been able to do something to mitigate this.
Union President Jerry Earle said he is left to believe that staffing shortages are to blame. His union has been working on recruitment and retention problems for months. He said the issues appear to be unique to Newfoundland and Labrador.
We lose sheriff's officers continuously to policing, to corrections, out of province. So we have to look at something that will keep sheriffs and recruit sheriffs in this profession because it's absolutely essential in the court system.
Opposition critics are now urging the provincial government to step in and get involved. We're told that the provincial justice minister is active on this issue today, but wasn't available to answer our questions. Sandy.
All right, thank you, Garrett, in St. John's. And several people in Alberta captured images of an object lighting up the night. Witnesses spotted this fireball high in the sky. It was seen from areas across the province and lasted between 10 to 20 seconds heading from the northeast to the southwest, while some online sleuths have suggested it could be space debris on re-entry, but there has been no formal confirmation. Well, if you somehow missed the marketing, today is what online retailers call Cyber Monday, another day after Black Friday that's filled with the hunt for deals. But with the ongoing trade war and the ballooning cost of living, how much are Canadians prepared to spend this holiday season? CTV's Adrian Gabriel is digging into that for us today. All right, Adrian, what did you pick up?
Sandy, whether Canadians are searching for gifts online this Cyber Monday or doing their shopping here in person, buying Canadian is on the wish list.
December has arrived, and with it, a flurry of Canadian consumers.
I'm sticking to a budget, trying to get really good deals, yeah.
A survey by the Bank of Montreal has found that 3 in 5 Canadians are adjusting their holiday spending amid tariff concerns, with 37% focusing on made-in-Canada gifts.
Being a bit patriotic about, how they want to spend their money over the holiday season to sort of give back into the Canadian economy.
The economic headwinds from inflation to debt levels are causing some to keep a tighter grip on their wallets.
What consumers are saying, the top of the list is to save money this holiday season. And so if you're going to be marketing online for Cyber Monday, I suspect you're going to be bringing out your best deals.
And cost-conscious Canadians are shifting purchase priorities. This survey by the Business Development Bank of Canada says the average household is spending just over $940 this year. More than half of that is expected to go towards Canadian products, contributing to $11 billion to Canada's GDP while supporting thousands of jobs.
Canadians are really being mindful of how they're going to spend their money over the holidays and where they want to put their money. And I think for a large chunk, it still is going to be around supporting, Canadian businesses.
Financial experts say taking the time to map out your shopping list as well as planning your purchases in advance are key to keeping a cap on your budget. Try and avoid those impulse buys and last-minute shopping. The calendar has now turned to December, and for those celebrating, the clock is officially ticking to get your gifts. Sandy.
Okay, thanks so much, CTV's Adrian Gabriel. Good advice there from him. Thank you for sharing your time with us this Monday. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Omar will be here later tonight. But in the meantime, your local CTV News is coming up. Bye for now. Hope we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.